On this edition of Oliver North's America, John Lott with reasons why the last 4 words of the Second Amendment really matter. Welcome to this edition of My America. I'm Oliver North. Our guest today, John Lott. He's the founder and president of the Crime Prevention Research Center. He recently served in the Trump administration as a senior advisor for the Office of Justice Programs and the Office of Legal Policy at the Department of Justice. He has a PhD in economics from UCLA and has held research and teaching positions in addition to being a prolific author. His most recent book, The War on Guns, Arming Yourself Against Gun Control Lies. In the aftermath of the Biden press conference on what they're going to do about, quote, gun control, you compiled a pretty good list of the lies they were telling. Give our viewers a sense for what they were.
It's amazing in how less than 10 minutes he's able to put out, I stopped counting it, like 24 different lies. It's not even necessary for people to know a lot of facts to know that the guy was just making things up. So for example, he was blaming the big spike in homicides last year in major urban areas on the lack of gun control. I mean, my question would be, what gun control laws got relaxed last year that he's blaming for the sudden spike last year? It just makes no sense. I mean, anybody who looks at that would say, look, it's pretty obvious reasons. You had many urban counties and places across the United States were releasing over 50% of the inmates from jails and prisons. You had police being ordered to stand down. You had funding for police being cut. You had prosecutors in major urban areas refusing to prosecute violent criminals. It's not rocket science to go and figure out why crime and murder rates increased last year in these areas. And, the thing is, Biden brought that up in connection with him caring about crimes being committed against Blacks and Hispanics. Well, I care about that, but I want to do something that actually works. And the thing is, not only never once did he even hint, either him or Harris, even hint at trying to make it riskier for criminals to go and commit crime, either in terms of arrests or convictions. But the types of proposals that he talked about are actually going to disarm the very people. I mean, here we're at a weird position. Democrats want to make it difficult for police to do their job, and they want to make it difficult for civilians, particularly those who are most vulnerable, poor Blacks who live in high crime urban areas, to be able to go and defend themselves. So they won't let the police defend you, and they don't want people to be able to go and defend themselves. The one thing that they push after each mass public shooting, and they were pushing on Thursday last week, was these background checks on private transfers of guns.
I believe the Senate should immediately pass 3 House-passed bills to close loopholes that allow gun purchasers to bypass the background checks.
In Washington, D.C., it costs $125 just for the background check to privately transfer a gun. I mean, that may not stop Ollie, you or I from being able to go and buy a gun, but if there's any group that my research convinces me benefits the most from having guns, it's the people who are most likely victims of violent crimes. At a $125 fee may stop those very people from being able to go and defend themselves.
I've got 18 grandkids, and when a birthday is happening, I often give them a large box. And on the box is a note that says, if you learn to use everything in this box, you'll never be hungry, you will never be lost, and you need fear nothing, and I will show you how to use them. And you open the box, the kid opens the box, and there's a Bible, there's a map and compass, and there's a 20-gauge shotgun. And you start with the Bible. It just happens there's 7 months a year, have 31 days, and there's 31 Proverbs. You give me a book report at the 31st day. Bring it back to me, and then I'll show you how to use the map and compass. Then I'll show you how to clean the shotgun, and then I'll take you out and show you how to shoot it. And I look at that transfer with a 14-year-old kid. I now have to, in Virginia, am I going to have to do a total background check? You know, the background check stuff has gone from 1 page to about 50 pages in some places. A 14-year-old kid background check? That's crazy. That's where we're headed.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, it's really outrageous. In Virginia, as well as the bill that they just passed in the House, if you, let's say you have a friend of yours who's a woman, and she calls you up on a Saturday evening and she says her ex is threatening her and stalking her, and that he's going to show up. He says he's going to show up in an hour. Can she go and borrow your gun for protection? You would be committing a felony for you to go and lend her that gun. The way the rule reads is that she has to be in, quote, imminent danger, which legally means that the guy has to be threatening her in front of her exactly at that moment when you lend her the gun. If he leaves, and even if he says he's going to come back in an hour, she has to give you the gun back immediately upon him leaving. I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, you know, you go through these different rules, and I guess I've been convinced over time that really the point of these laws isn't to stop crime. It's to go and prevent law-abiding citizens, to make it costly for them to have guns. So, you know, this $125 fee in DC, you know, the thing is, if you believe that these rules reduce crime, and I don't, but if you believe that they do, then presumably they reduce crime for everybody, not just the law-abiding citizen who's going out of their way in order to try to, you know, obey the law that's there. Well, as an economist, I would say if it benefits everybody, why make the one person pay the whole freight? You should have everybody pay for it out of general revenue. In addition, supposedly, if they think these background checks are good, you want to encourage people to do it. You don't want to tax them. Do you think making people pay a $125 fee encourages them to go and do that? For both of those reasons, you should pay for it out of general revenue. But Democrats and gun control advocates will fight you tooth and nail against doing that, even though it fits in logically, and I think a very reasonable request.
Well, I'm looking at the idea that they're now going to make it possible for somebody to sue a firearms manufacturer when some bad person commits a crime with it. And I look at what just happened, you know, just a few weeks ago in Washington, D.C., a crazed man with a Nissan SUV drove it into a police officer and killed him. Right. And so should somebody be able to sue Nissan because they made the car? That's a perfect example of where we're headed with firearms.
No, exactly. Look, I mean, Biden lied when he said that gun makers and gun sellers are exempt from being sued. If they sell a gun that's defective and somebody gets harmed, they can be sued. If they sell a gun illegally and break the law, for example, don't do a background check on it, they can get sued. But you're exactly right. What they want to change it to is that anytime you sell a gun that's misused, you can be sued. So, you know, the example you bring up with cars is right. I mean, there's 4.5 million people who are injured in car accidents who require medical attention each year. If somebody's driving and they're not paying attention, they're talking or texting, should Ford Motor be sued for all the damages from that crash, for all the pain and suffering, for all the lost wages, for all the medical care? What do you think would happen to the car industry if we had, 4.5 million lawsuits like that occurring each year?
I have no doubt that the goal of what they're doing is to basically, as you stated at the very beginning of this chat, they want us to give up our guns. You know, he has said several times that he wants to, quote, ban the use of an AR-15, or as he calls it, an assault weapon. Well, the modern sporting rifles, there's millions of them out there. And are they going to try to confiscate them like they did, for example, in New Zealand? I mean, if that's the idea, there's going to be an awful lot of lawbreakers in America.
They have a very long-term plan on this. They just, they'll make it as costly as they can for people to be able to go own guns, try to reduce gun ownership rates. And then they know that as fewer people own guns, it's going to be easier and easier for them to pass additional types of gun control regulations. It's easier for them to demonize it. If Harris and Biden last Thursday really thought that they had a strong case, they wouldn't have had to have the dozens of lies that they had. They could have said, look, we want to have a 30-day waiting period rather than going and claiming the Charleston loophole would have, stopped the Dylan Roof's attack on the church. Or they would have said, look, we want to have the types of lawsuits that you're talking about with regard to companies. But they can't make those types of claims, or they feel that they'll lose if they do. So they feel that they have to lie about these things.
John, I want to thank you very much for taking time to join us today, because you are a fact checker. There's very few fact checkers in the so-called mainstream media today. Clearly, their bias is in favor of making America a gun-free zone. And with your help, maybe we can prevent that, because the last 4 words of that Second Amendment are, shall not be infringed. Hopefully we can keep reminding people of that.
Just as an aside, you have Bloomberg literally spending many hundreds of millions of dollars each year. Yeah. You have the federal government subsidizing the other side massively on this. You have billionaires, other billionaires like the Arnold Foundation and stuff, putting in like $50 million into RAND to go and push gun control type things. It's just overwhelming. The massive amount of money that gets put into propping up the gun control side. You have gun control groups that are working with TV producers and script writers to go and get their slants in these things. It's just the avalanche of stuff going on, and I'm glad you're there. But there's a real battle that's going on. People can find more at our website at crimeresearch.org, crimeresearch.org.
I urge you to go out and get a copy of John's new book. I urge you to make sure that you dial in and get some other friends who want to defend the Second Amendment. It shall not be infringed. If this podcast has been informative, helpful, or encouraging, take time now to subscribe or comment and let me know. By doing so, you too can become part of this historical record of how America persevered and once again prospered. Until next time, remember, Semper Fidelis is more than a slogan for U.S. Marines. Always faithful is a way of life.